Hey, Ian.
Well, there's been some other stuff going on, but that's none of my business. We're just having a little tea time chat, coffee time chat. We're working on the bug again because we got weather. Everything's outside. We're waiting on parts for the Jeep. Little Jewel's too big to have in the shop. And I feel like Volkswagen still. So we got the fenders put in place and partially fiberglassed in. You could see all that armature is off now. We're gonna have to create this shape in the back. But since we got a lot of wind and it's a little chilly, I'm just catching up on some block sanding. Laying up a bit more on the roof here, and then I got fiberglass and kitty hair into the fenders. So I'm just gonna go through the process of what it takes to try to get these surfaces, I use the term flat or straight, it's both of those accordingly. You want that perfect mirror finish across the whole car. And right now we are far, far away from that. And do a little discussion on the technique and the tools from such a raw state. I mean, look at the surface here. Imagine if you painted that. It would look like a landscape, a desert, barren landscape. And there's nothing I love more than a desert, barren landscape. I don't want my car to look like that. You got the mountains, you got the valleys. All you need is a shoreline and you got a full experience. Got Jamie's respirator intact, got my respirator intact. And when I'm doing this type of stuff, I keep the shop doors closed because I'm trying to keep the chunky dust in, because 36 grit makes a powerful arrangement. You'll see the floor develop as we work through this. So yeah, respirators, of course, at bare minimum, just the smaller dust masks, but we got the cartridge ones to make it count. I'm gonna get out this tool first. Body work, just like so many other things, everybody's got their opinion, and a lot of the same, or a lot of differing opinions yield the same results. That's why you see so many beautiful show cars with perfect paint jobs, but then you see the ones that aren't perfect. That's usually somewhere in the realm that I deliver my product. But we're trying to do it really nice this time, and I do know how to make it nice. It just takes a ton of time. So I'm going to discuss these three tools. Pro people will know already how they're going to go through this, but if you're just learning, you know, I'm many, many years into this, never schooled specifically, but taught a few things. Tom Joyce, heck yeah, he was my manager at the Art Foundry, and he described something to me that I never even understood, never even thought of, because I always thought, well, you're sanding the car to make it smooth, right? We were working with cast bronze and, you know, sanding this material, grinding this material to make it smooth. He said, man, you're just doing it all wrong. He said, you can't fill a hole with a hole. Like, and then he walked away, right? I'm like, what? So what he was describing, he came back later and filled me in, but look over here. Let's just say you wanted this surface to match this surface, right? My naive brain was saying, well, just sand it off so it's smooth, right? all you've created was a bigger hole. You created a hole this big. So what he was saying, with imperfections in your filler application, this is really imperfect, or in a casting like I was experiencing, you'll have this porosity, you'll have imperfections. So the quickest and most effective thing to do is fill it. Do a little prep, fill that, and then carry on. And that's where we're at with today's adventure. People will, they'll put a primer and a block coat, a guide coat over it. At this level, 36 grit, you don't need that. You can see these marks that I had been making with the Sharpie marker. It's sort of mapping out the highs and lows. And you could see this is the guide coat right here on this side. You could see where the sander is hitting the high spots, right? So to cut down the high spots to match this, you'd just be creating a bigger hole. You'd try to fill the hole with the hole. We need to fill the center. This top was sitting out in the desert sun for years, and it's starting to do this. Short of building some kind of steel armature inside to try to puff that back up, I don't see that happening. So we're going in. We got a lot of filler. If it was a steel car, you could hammer it up. But where we're at today, just for lack of anything better to do, I mean, this is always going to need to be done. So we're going to lay on some filler and describe the process. Any questions?
Nope.
Well, the second guy that told me about bodywork, Mr. Rich Evans, who is a perfectionist, a master of the craft. We'll get into the finer grits, etc. But I was working on a project for SEMA with him, and Gene Winfield came by to check it out. And both of those dudes were like, you could do all the math, you could do all the technical stuff, everything. So just close your eyes and do this. And that will tell you, I'm doing this. Here, my eyes are closed, right? Is that where the color changes? Right through here?
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it, just like your eye will see it. If it was one color, you could wet it. So I'm saying we're going to put the filler right here. Am I wrong?
No.
Use the force and a lot of lightweight filler. Let's get to mixing. This is less than 24 hours old, so I'm not going to scuff this. I could still feel that it's very fresh and dust-free. If this sits out, you're going to have to scuff it back. I'm going to go and do a quick little DA on this and then lay up another level. The way that I work too is I got different panels presented. So this ridge line is the center. So this will be, say, 1, 2, fender, fender. So 4 things I can work on while this material is curing. So you're not just sitting there on your phone.
Scrolling Instagram.
That's correct. Oh, I'm going to fix this first before we start. This has been bugging Jamie for every video.
Fix the flag. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, everybody's got their own OCD, right? Jamie's looking at that.
I hate crooked pictures on walls. It like freaks me out.
We got a load of this filler. Let's get into it. A couple people brought up this topic, and I got to agree with them. They're like, hey, take your old window. Makes a perfect mixing board. Super easy to clean, very strong. Wouldn't recommend throwing it on the ground, but I've been having trouble with this paper because it tends to pull up. I mix up a lot of filler, right? No bones about it. So if you're doing a little touch-up, this is optimal, but for the big work, you're going to need some glass or a bigger mixing pad.
Wow.
Very passionate. Also, people see me using this putty knife all the time. Yes, I do. I use a metal spreader and I use a putty knife because they're strong. These things I've been have for about 5 years. I've been have them for about 5 years. That's a lot of cars.
I was gonna say.
These plastic ones work great too when you get into different contours and a lighter application of filler. Right now we're deep into the build up and 36 grit cut back, so you need the power to spread. Let me get out the DA, do a quick little thing. Got 36 grit on this, just to do a quick little prep, just to take off any major high spots. because your spreader will catch if there's a really hard ridge. So I'm gonna get Jamie her respirator and myself one as well. One other thing I see people mistakenly doing is try to block out a car with a DA sander. It's never gonna happen. These are good for light fine grit prep and just for what I'm doing here, just a quick scuff. We'll get into that later, but I like electric because for what I do in the shop, if you've got a huge shop and everything's on air, your compressor's running 24/7, but why would you run a big 220 volt motor when you're just spinning this little thing, right? So it's just like energy conserving. It's gonna prep this. So I use the Sharpie too, just to put a little roadmap of where I'm going with this filler. And I'm gonna mix up as much as that glass can hold. Spread it out. This should be cool too. I'm interested to see how the camera picks up this screen on the mixing table. Sometimes the camera freaks out. Just prepping up everything I'm gonna need before I mix it. See, I got this long block too. We'll get into that momentarily. It's pretty chilly. So I'm gonna add a decent amount of catalyst. Another point, people say, oh, you gotta knead it together. Don't stir it because you'll get pinholes. Yes and no. This material is really, really good for not leaving pinholes. And when I'm mixing this much up, I want to get that catalyst, the blue part of the arrangement, thoroughly swirled in. So stirring is a quick way to do that, and then I'll knead it. If you try doing this with the plastic one, probably would have folded over or broke by now. Just like with the fiberglass mat, you know, you can have gloves, you can wear a suit, you can do all the things, but if you just take your time methodically, you're not going to get this on your fingers. You'll see why I put the Sharpie down too. Because when I'm doing a big surface like this, I got the mix pretty good, but I'm going to want to get that surface wet. So I'm going to continue to mix it on the surface of the car because it's just such a big area. See what I'm getting at with the glass? You just keep everything clean. I'm pushing this material against the surface. If I was to just lay it on, it might not stick 100%. And again, this is the down and dirty. This is one of the first rudimentary layups of filler. So if this doesn't hold, everything on top of it's not going to hold. Professionals chime in, tell me how I'm doing this all wrong. And then we'll all talk about how cool it looks in the end. Got my yardstick. And clean the tool. Set it back. Carry on. So that's roughly where we're going with this. All right, get this together. Fill in a couple areas right here. Nice and cool, so we got a lot of time to work today.
That looks very satisfying.
Oh, it is. So this is what I was talking about, right? You got your landscape, you got your highs, your lows, your ins and outs. The idea is to take the great leveler, right? So now we got this. We're going to put this right across and just pull it. It's not going to be perfect, but look, it's going to give us a bit of a different read on the surface. Right? Pull it right down to nothing. Take our excess material, and we see that this has got a little imperfection here. So that's the idea about filling a hole with material and not creating another hole. And I'm going to be doing a lot of work to get this center rib aligned and the same radius coming up. So that's kind of what I do with the leftover stuff after that first pull. Because now that we got this close, we don't want to do much more to that. So that's going to remain our surface, but then we're going to come in and clean up. See the little pit holes there? Put a quick little lock on that. And then with this, we're just going to gently pull it right through. And take off all these high spots without pulling away the material we need in the center to raise it. And feathering out the edges. We don't need any material through here where it's already good. Same thing here. Just going to pull this down. Yeah, this really is a solo experience. Like you say, it is satisfying, and you could spend all day doing this. It's kind of a...
That looks cool. That looks
kind of
fun.
into a trance. I did a couple time lapses, and Jamie may or may not have inserted them by now in the video. We'll see. But that's pretty much where it's at. Yeah, it's like ice in a cake. So you see the different high spots. You see the surface texture. When I come back with the sander, that's going to reveal it even further. So while that's setting up, I'm going to get into the other panels. As I mentioned, I like to move around and not get in the way of the work I just done. So swap to the other side of the car and prep out these fenders. I don't like to waste a lot of time messing around with the smaller tools, so big guy, big disc, 36 grit. This goes very fast. It could get out of control, but use your ninja tactics. Sometimes it works out. You're going to see the color change as I start to sand on this. And again, I'm not trying to dig through just to smooth it out, I'm trying to create a contour that I can fill up from. So follow along and let's discover.
Wow. Wow. I don't think I've ever seen you do that before.
Very fast and effective. Jamie can type that in right there. We'll let this dust settle, then we'll discuss. So, yeah, you said you never seen me do that before because it's a very messy operation. You don't want to be around it without a respirator. But let's read the surface. That's the fiberglass of this fender, right? So we don't want to go below that. I just want to take some of the gel coat. That's the black material. So you can see I got a pretty decent gauge on the contour we need. And then I went up against the bug fender. You can just see a little bit from the Baja bug fiberglass sticking through. So that's kind of where we want to be. But you can see very low here. The sander didn't even touch it. So I can work with that. But in looking at our contour to match the other side, this time I didn't lose the template. You know, we'll get into creating this as we go. You can see it's reasonably close. But I also want to look at this. I think I'm going to make that out of this side here. We want this to be the same as well. That's this arc. So just to say, you want to come in like that. You want to be somewhere in that realm. Right, so if I was to use this as a spreader, I could just pull the material up just like that. So this has got to be cut back. You can see that's where it's hitting. So cool. Let me get that sander and take that back a little bit more. Pretty close. So I took it down as low as I can. See, I'm cutting through. I'm going to put fiberglass across here now. Because that's matching. I'm going to lay a piece of glass across here. Try to build this some more strength into the bottom of this. And then with that, I'm going to cut this right back now also. And I can see the line. Look at that piece of material right there. That's what we want. Yeah, there it is. So this is a little bit nasty. I'm going to get the DA now and just cut in so I can laminate that.
What's a DA?
Dual action. Want me to explain?
Yes.
Okay. What I was using there, I guess you could consider a single action because it only spins like this, right? What this does, it's kind of like, remember that game Spirograph where you went around and around with the pen on the gears? That's what this does. So it's kind of like the orbit of the planets. It's an orbital sander, actually. I'm going down the rabbit hole. This is an orbital sander as well as a DA. So as it's spinning, it's doing this.
Oh.
Two actions. Duality.
Gotcha.
It's very exciting. Watch how it works. See how it's all over the place?
Uh-huh.
It's actually going up and down. There will be a lot of finishing on the underside of that fender, but I'm trying to put some strength in where it counts for what we're doing right now. So I'm going to glass that over. Some strips to make the bottom of the fender really secure. And move on to the next panel. While we're doing all this work, the roof is curing up. So I'm going to go in a little circle. That's the plan. That's the logistical side. Definitely not as exciting as steel fabrication, but same process if you think about it. Come up with an idea, gather your materials, and execute. Come on, be nice. Get that settle in. There it is. I usually use a brush to do this, a paintbrush, but guess what wasn't in the cabinet this morning when I opened it?
A paintbrush?
Paintbrush. And I ain't driving an hour and a half to get a paintbrush round trip. So see, I'm trying to grab the other fender, bring that across the patch to one that's bolted to the car. I'm letting it hang down just because I want a good area to work from, not just a bunch of strands on the edge. I want the good woven material. And I don't want to build this up so much that material is falling off the car. It will. If it gets too heavy, it'll slide right off. So I'm going to keep it a little thin and very sticky so it stays put. Move on to the next one. So what you were seeing at the top here that I cleaned up with the DA, I do leave material overlapping sometimes that just gets removed. You just lose that because I want a good bond where it's going to stay. So, you know, that little bit here will eventually disappear with the sander. Same with all this hanging down, but I got the good weave in the area I need. Cool. So now, while that's setting up, we'll move on over to the roof again. If you're a skilled body person, you know you can work through this process relatively efficiently, but it takes time no matter what. Especially a full, you know, exotic car body like this. If you're repairing a ding in a door, then it's a different story, but this is sculpture. Saw my post yesterday about the long sword. That's why I did this. You'll see a lot of the sanding blocks are about this long. There's a standard longboard sheet in the US at least that you buy that fits these, and this is good for just about everything. You know, you consider you're doing just the door, that's just about half the door, so that's a pretty substantial sweep. But when you're getting into something this large, you're going to need something bigger. Because what's going to happen is that shorter board is going to fall, it's going to roll in the contours. So if you use a thing this big, it's kind of like driving Jamie's Jeep versus a city bus across the desert, right? Your little wheels are here, you're going to go up and down over all the mountains, right?
I can't wait.
But if you got this big, long spread, you're going to get stuck. You're going to high side in the center. That's what you want to do when you're sanding. Let's drive across the landscape, shall we? Here we are, coming up, coming across. Look, now this is a curved surface. It's a compound curve, of course, but it's outward radius. So we want to maintain that curve. But look, see how that just fell over? Right there. See that? That's what it's reading. So that would have done that with a shorter piece, but you potentially could have come up here and did that. So you're bouncing off a much wider range. See? There's your problem right there. Is that too high? We don't know, because we're not focusing on this area here. We're focusing from here to there. And that's where, if you had a flexible sander, that would be optimal. But for this point, this long straight bar works just great, because we're just trying to rough this out. In the end, you would love to have perhaps this. This is just the contour gauge I use for matching contours, but see how it curves? So you could put sandpaper on this potentially. See, look at the crown. That's what I'm getting at. They sell all kinds of different pieces for sanding, but for right now, you wouldn't want this because it's not going to really show you the high spot. We don't know what our curve is yet. Class goes on and on. And also having this 3-foot sweep on a sanding, it's almost like a belt sander at that point. Instead of just scratching it, that's what you should be doing at 36 grit. You should be filing the surface down, not just scratching it. So see how close it is right here? You got a nice scrape right through. Very little low spots. Now cross hatch it. All right, so reading that for what it is, I think this is all still needs to come up a bit, right? We got a nice degree of scratching right through here. This is high, I can feel it already. You can see there was just a swipe of material cut right through that, right? And I'm working from the bottom up because I want to put as much of a crown on as possible. I want to eliminate that sort of upside down feeling. I also feel like this is a little bit too tall right through here. So I'm going to put a gauge on that and we can discuss. So for this, I'll just use a piece of rod. It has a little bit of a bend to it. It's not perfectly straight, but it is flexible. You'll see if I turn it, it always wants to fall down. So that's how I'm going to put it on the car. We're hitting that high spot we ran up against. So I still think that's a little bit high. See the air space in between here? So I'm going to move it down. Very close. See the shadow? Yeah. So it's darn near there. So we're coming low again here. That's why this spot has to come down. I'm going to blast this with the DA sander, mellow that out, and then check it with this gauge again. That's one thing I said earlier about the DA sander. I'm not blocking with this. I'm just eliminating this bit of material. So I cut the top off of that crown right there. Laying this in. See, that's what happens. I moved the problem down to here a little bit, but I also eliminated the amount of filler needed through here. So, eyes closed. This is high right here. That's our high spot. We're going to want to fill this right here. See that? Not even looking. And that color match shows the same. So I'm going to fill this. As the old saying goes, back to the mixing board. There's got to be a better way to scoop the material out of the can than this. Any pros know that solution? All right, so we got our color coming all uniform. Sweet. So same thing we did on the other side. We're gonna do a big fat layout and then refine it. Hopefully this is keeping attendance because it's not super exciting.
Oh, I'll make it exciting with my music.
She's got a plan. I like it. Here we go. So that's that layup. I'm just gonna hit this fender fast and furious and go into the filler here. That'll give a good example of one around the clock process. As soon as I do that, we'll just do one more talk on that scuffing of this side. It feels to be reasonably dry. So, Jamie.
Yes.
Montage. Put on our respirators. I'm gonna get to it. No more explanation needed. This line I was showing is kind of the halfway point as to where the fiberglass is hitting. You can see the gel coat, resin, and the fiberglass I ordered, and the fiberglass I added. So the bond is right through here. So I'm using the plastic one. I can put a little curve in the action. Alright, so this is just about a once around the car experience. I'm going to do this once more to explain how we just keep going. You know, we filled this up. It's actually nice and warm because it's catalyzing, but it's a little bit sticky. So this paper is starting to get wasted. It's filling up. Tends to happen. A little product review session. I found this on Amazon. It's one of the least expensive products listed, and we can see why. I don't know the name brand of it, but 36 grit, it's a roll, and it doesn't hold up like a Norton product is really good. 3M's really good. The abrasive falls right off. See all the yellow?
Uh-oh.
So you don't want the abrasive to fall off, but you get what you pay for, right? This was very inexpensive. But I'm just going to drag this across like we did from the beginning. Right there, we got that same thing on the road mount. Okay. All right, so check this out. what we achieved in that last wipe of material is a lot less of the big valleys. See what we have now? Remember, we had two areas that were very low. Now we just have a number of small areas where the tool was wiped across. So I'm gonna freshen up that 36 grit, or change the paper on that, let this cure out even longer so that's not even the least bit gummy. And I'm gonna go ahead with that longboard and cut right through all this, see what we come up with. But again, now it's you're seeing, because that board doesn't lie, you're seeing the level. So this equals that, right down the lane. So if I cut these down a little bit, I'll probably be able to put one more uniform wipe across, and that will be it for 36 grit. It's fun, body work, it's fun.
I'm ready for lunch.
What time is it?
I don't know, lunchtime. Ready for a burger and a beer.
Tune in next time.